So let's talk about the spectacular pictures today of Scotland's last coal-fired power station being demolished. And coal is very close to complete extinction, in fact, in the UK. But this country, like most others, continues to rely on other fossil fuels, mainly oil and gas, for energy. But there's pressure to reduce that in a bid to cut emissions and slow climate change. And this week, the UK's oil and gas strategy was challenged in court by campaigners. And Richard, what was this court case all about? And is litigation generally likely to have some sort of influence on speeding up our transition towards renewables, do you think?
Yes, this court case was brought by a group called Paid to Pollute. And the basis of their case is that basically, if you look at the way that the oil and gas industry intersects with the Treasury, some years it ends up paying tax net to the Treasury. Other years it ends up taking tax net from the Treasury. So the plaintiffs in this case are basically arguing that in the years when it actually receives money, this is a perverse incentive. Effectively, it's paying oil companies to get stuff out of the ground at the very time when scientists and various other analyses are basically saying we shouldn't be getting so much oil and gas out of the ground. In fact, we shouldn't be doing any more exploration and development if we are just to have, enough fossil fuels that can keep us below the 1.5 Celsius limit. So they had the hearing yesterday, and we should be getting a judgment maybe tomorrow, maybe in a week or two.
And Richard, briefly, I mean, there are court cases around the world. Are they making a difference to government policies?
I think some have made a big difference. The big one was the Urgenda court case brought up against the Dutch government a couple of years back, which really forced the government to accelerate its carbon cutting pledges. But often the court cases raise publicity about an issue, and that can be as useful in the long run as actually winning. And that, I think, is probably the case with this Paid to Pollute one that we're seeing. The subsidy regime is quite murky, and this will I think, shine some light upon it.
Sisi, what do you think? Do you think that this is basically down to governments making decisions about transitioning away from fossil fuels, or can other influences be important, like public pressure, for example?
Yeah, I think these cases are perfect demonstration of people power, right? I think people power can be very strong and effective, but the challenge that we face is how can we scale people power? I think basically we don't just want one successful case or two successful cases. We want lots of cases and lots of individual actions. And the trouble with that is that, it's hard to scale people power. But I think one of the key issues that we need to address in this challenge is that we need to really make this mental linkage between climate change, which is a very abstract concept, with individual lives. And, how does climate change reduce food on your tables? How does climate change stop your children from going to school? Once every individual has made that mental link, I mean, I struggle with it sometimes too, even after studying climate change for so many years. Once people have made that mental link between that abstract concept and their daily lives, then they can make really individual changes. They can lobby their organizations, they can lobby their workplaces, they can lobby their governments.
Okay.
So I think
sorry to cut you off, Sisi, but just a quick word on that issue with Richard, because the government might say, well, yes, but we need to worry about energy security. That relates to people. They might worry about getting a steady supply of electricity. People in the fossil fuel industry will worry about their jobs. I mean, people can relate to that too. The transition has to be managed carefully, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And we've seen examples, of course, in the UK of how not to do it with the phase out of coal mining going back several decades. That was a really disruptive and very unfair transition. Germany, Chile, other countries are moving off of coal via other routes, basically consultations with mining communities, working out what support they need in order to get through this. But I think it's also important to look at the overall scale of likely job losses. If you compare the size of the workforce in the UK oil and gas industry, for example, it's nothing compared with the number of workers in retail who've lost their jobs over the last 10, 20 years as online retailing has become a thing. So yes, let's have a transition, and a just transition, but actually really let's make it a genuine transition.